Hey, what's up guys and welcome back to Anime King 2, and today I'm going to be giving you something new with an Immortal Naruto who has lived past the Shinobi era. He's watched civilization rise and fall for eons upon eons. He traversed the world and now he's in the presence of the gods, Zeus, Hera, Odin, and the other gods. Who is not going to take too kindly of someone like him? Well, someone with such power. So watch as they react when they find out about him, a god amongst men, and even the god amongst gods. So yeah, sit back, relax, and yeah, I hope you guys enjoy. Don't forget to go ahead and check out the other channels. I hope you guys enjoy each and every one of them. Links will be down in the description, so yeah, without further ado or wasting more time, let's leap right into this, shall we? Begin now, guys. I always believed that it was a myth. It couldn't be possible. I never thought he truly existed. A man who has been walking the earth before the gods themselves. Surely, it must just be a joke for it sound to be false. Unbelievable. However, I was proven wrong. My very eyes. I thought they were deceiving me. However, in front of me was reality. He visited us. That same man that was described in the so long forgotten ancient texts that were left behind. I couldn't believe it. Here, that seemed to be created from the purest of gold, eyes that resemble the sun, and a body that surpassed any known warrior. If that was not enough, he had the audacity to empty our entire supply of flour. And for what else? He wanted a meal. Preposterous. And what is even this ramen that he spoke so highly about? What is this ramen that he praised so much? I truly do not know. That was the testimony of a scribe, a long forgotten ancient writing, in a hidden, remote Chinese village. The time was 4900 BC. As of now, there was no creatures, apart from the oldest primordials, that could recall the age of what was known as Shinobis. A time where warriors used to roam the nations together, but separated in their own village. The age of Shinobi was a long, bright, dangerous time of living. It all began when the one that is known as the Sage of Six Paths delivered a blessing unto the humans, allowing them to activate what is known as chakra, a spiritual and physical energy that came to life. No one could remember why this happened, but there were some rumors that it began with a war that shook the very fabric of the earth. It was chaotic. It was large. It was a period of time that blurred the lines between literal godhood and mortals. Lone individuals having abilities that could rock an entire foundation, that could slice mountains, that could cause literal tsunamis, could make the heavens shock and quake with lightning. Those people could stand toe to toe with many modern pantheons. Yes, they wield incredible, unbelievable powers. However, amongst all of them, there was one that stood away from them all, one that stood out as the greatest, as the strongest, one that seemed eternal, He was known by many names. However, the most famous was the gallant sage of the East. Despite records of sightings of him through history, meeting with many people throughout time, men and women, his whole aura was so cryptic and mysterious. One could not tell the true glimpse or the true understanding of this being. None but the primordials and the elder deities could actually tell the truth of him these days. No one else. The records were so cryptic and confusing to many. But that was a problem. Paranoia started to spread. The thought that there was a being out there that contained such power that could shake the fabric of reality. One might believe that this was just an over-exaggeration, but they do not truly know. But if it is true, what is he planning? What sort of things might he be creating and plotting for years now? Centuries. No one knew. At the moment, currently at Japan, spring of 2000. Hey, Pops. Yes, son? I'm bored. Wait, don't you dare. Hi, bored. I'm Dad. A loud groan could be heard from the son. Two people sat on a very high cliff overlooking the sea. Well, one was sitting, the other one seemed to be experiencing physical and mental pain from the horrible joke. The tallest was a blond man, as he was currently inhaling a bowl of ramen at an inhuman pace. He might seem to look human, but his stature was not fitting of one. 3 whisker marks on his cheek as he inhaled the ramen. As he leaned back to drink the broth, you could see his well-toned stomach with a well-firmed six-pack abs and strange red-like tattoo markings on his body. Beside him on the ground was a less human-looking individual. The average person would think that they were an imp because of their very small stature. Little under 3 feet, their midnight black complexion, covered by a childlike yukata, a green one. The little creature was barely getting back up from the disgusting attempt at humor, returning back to a gigantic slab of meat. It took a bite into it, swallowing bone and meat in one go. It then looked back up to the one that they call Pops, its large yellow-eyed dots, looking up with curiosity. It finished swallowing the food before opening its mouth to speak. So, what should we do today? The blonde shifted his gaze down towards the creature. A pair of golden ring eyes focused on the one that he considered his son. He shrugged. I'm up for anything that you want, he said. As he continued his meal, his son scratched his horn head in thought, removing the large hat, revealing mossy hair. As he thought, the world has been boring since the end of World War II. Asia did have a few skirmishes here and there to occupy the duo, but nothing major happened since the Great War. He would not complain about peace as moderate as it was, because that was something that his own father yearned for. But he was looking for something to do. They have already been all over the world, traveling through the 5 continents. They made their way in search for great food and adventure and all that. The blonde had insisted though on staying in the Far East for the last few centuries. Naruto and Uzumaki was strong, perhaps one of the strongest beings in the planet. There was little that he felt apprehension towards. Well, anything that was not omnipotent. But I am strong as well too. I'm not as strong as Pops, obviously, but I can hold my own. And if push come to shove, I'll just call for help. The shorter of the duo thought. There had to be a reason for his father's decision, but for the life of him, he just couldn't think of any. Maybe it was his own appetite towards most living creatures that wasn't his family, or those who he considered precious. But there was no simple valid excuse for them not to do whatever they wanted. After all, if they wanted to do something, who exactly is gonna stop them? You know, I've been getting sick of Japan and Asia in general. I mean, we've traveled everywhere here. And yeah, the dishes are nice and all. The people sometimes as well. But I want more variety. Why can't we visit Europe again? Or America? Asks the little guy. Naruto sighed as he placed his empty bowl down, as he gazed out toward the sea in thought. It's complicated. Well then make it not complicated, his son said, crossing his arms, as Naruto raised an eyebrow at the unexpected lip. Little sassy guy, aren't you? Naruto said, making Zetsu wink, and also grumble under his breath. A good way to put it is, I can't afford to go there anymore, said Naruto. How? You're stronger than ever, Pops. The green-haired young man almost screamed in exasperation. That's just it, Zetsu. I am too strong. Do you realize how threatened people feel because of my very existence, let alone those that can sense my power? As Zetsu was just staring at him, Naruto decided to elaborate on what he meant. What do you think happened when someone unfamiliar with us meets either of us? Naruto asks. Zetsu scratched his head. They flee, he said. Naruto shook his head. That may be true for weaker creatures like most humans or monsters. However, it's another story entirely for different beings of higher power, like gods or celestials. They have too much pride for their own good. Zetsu tilted his head as he listened to his father. Majority of those higher beings would see me as a threat, regardless of my intentions. And what do you think they will do if I enter their zones of influence? Let me prance around? Naruto questioned his son, who nodded in understanding. No, they would not. They will start blasting around before asking questions, regardless of where I was. You have never truly experienced it because of your own ability to suppress yourself. However, I am different, he said. This is all I had to deal with for the first few thousand years of my life. If it wasn't for that stupid Jade Emperor throwing his armies and people at me or my siblings, I wouldn't have garnered any reputation here, he said. But why stay here then? Zetsu said, confused. Why stay anywhere, he asked. Well, because now people know I'm not someone to mess around with. The Taoists and Hindus know to keep their distance. And the Shintos, they're alright with me. Amaterasu-chan made sure of that. Not to mention I have allies here. Don't forget your uncles in the Sage Realm. Zetsu nodded at the explanation as he was thinking deeply. It really makes sense when I think about it. Pops and Kurama are some of the top dogs out there, so there is really nothing to fear that much. Plus, everyone in Asia sort of keep their distance away from us. Naruto had forged and created many friendships between various supernaturals in the Asia continent, many of them considered to be a pantheon-level threat. He had a large pull here that he lacked in other parts of the globe, especially in the West. Zetsu heard and read a lot of bad things about the so-called gods dominating the Western Hemisphere. Be that Zeus' vindictiveness or his paranoia, or Odin, more similar but more calculative personality, or even Ra's cruelty. However, compared to their power base, there isn't anything that the Western pantheons could hold that would catch them off guard or make them bow to their whims. They were simply too powerful to be challenged. However, they had too much pride and too little care for anything that was below them. Of course, Naruto was not afraid to fight them, but any fight that he might get involved in would lead to mass destruction of the environment and the population in that area. Something that he, as a sage, will not allow himself to do. But Zetsu found himself racking his brain for the said argument. He did not really care much for the consequences as his father. However, he had a way of preventing that, and he just hoped that his father will agree with him once he tell him. But, I mean, we don't have to announce ourselves. I could use that. Zetsu tried to convince his father. You mean that technique that you've been working on? What did you call it again? Naruto asked, looking towards him. Mole in plain sight, Zetsu said. His tone was filled with nothing but pride, as he's been working on it for some time now, and it would offer up the solution that they needed for their little dilemma that was holding them back from making a move. It was a similar skill to the Tishikage, the second Tishikage ability where he erases presence and chakra away from other shinobi. However, Zetsu wanted to take it a step further than that and completely erase the user from everyone's radar, including all seeing beings like astral or sky deities or multiple pantheons. However, he failed to accomplish that goal, so he decided to shift his objective from erasing to blending into one's surrounding. The technique was powered by Senjutsu, which he and his father were both masters of. Nature chakra would coat the body in a thin ooze of layers surrounding them, while releasing a mist of chakra around the surrounding area. The nature chakra would act as a masking chakra for the other type of chakra in the body, making the user seems like they were purely made of senjutsu, or if they were simply a nature spirit. Since he and his father had a great grasp on senjutsu, that was an easy task. However, there was a problem. I got it down, but I still have an issue. The jutsu, maintained by the user concentration, which means that you have to keep on focusing. Any lapse in focus will land us in the crosshair of any supernatural being with sensory abilities. As Naruto gained a surprised look, followed by a very proud one as he looked at Zetsu. You did? That's my boy, he said. He scooped Zetsu up, much to his annoyance. After all, that was an achievement of the highest order. Hiding their power from other deities was almost impossible. If they made themselves invisible to all eyes with a jutsu, they could still be detected by a powerful sensor. Simply walking into a pantheon who had authority over an area was out of the question, especially if what he heard about that Zeus breath was true. His son, however, was ironically like a sponge. Get it? Because he was half plant, he absorbed information and thought of unpredictable ways to use it. Very unpredictable ways. Quite the outside the box, like himself when he was his age. But his boy was a born genius, no doubt about it. That was far from the first jutsu that he developed. However, Naruto always felt a swell of fatherly pride whenever his boy made such a wonderful discovery. Yes, he always did. He was immensely proud. But Zetsu's problem was a huge one. As old as he was, Naruto was still Naruto, meaning that he could never give all of his focus to a single task for too long of a period, especially considering that the technique will need to be activated and they would inevitably had to sleep for the night. It simply wasn't possible for them to remain hidden forever in another party radar. Then again, did they really have to? Naruto has been alive for eons. He had time to become masters of the shinobi art, especially Fuinjutsu, knowledge of everything behind jutsus, and some of the Western. The idea came to him almost instantaneously, a seal to act as a nature chakra battery with a multi-layer jutsu shiki to act as a body filter that circulated around the body. The proud father narrowed his eyes as Zetsu was trying to get away from his father whole. His whole of pride, he called it. Now all I need to do is put it into practice, Naruto thought. Zetsu had enough as he used his powerful teeth to bite at his father's arms. "Let me down, Pops," he said. "No, not until you learn to accept my fatherly affection." "Trademark." "Wait, are you seriously trademarking this?" said Zetsu. "Screw you. I'm the best dad in the world. I can trademark fatherlyhood itself. Besides..." "No, no," said Zetsu, knowing what was coming. "I wouldn't be much of a pattern if I wasn't the best I could be." "Get it?" said Naruto. Zetsu groaned to the heavens, making Naruto laugh. Time skip. East. Highland Park, Richmond, Virginia. 1st of June, 2000. In one of the park clearings, Naruto woke up to the first rays of dawn. It's been a few months since his son has spoken about his great accomplishment, and Naruto had stayed up for a few weeks working on the seal and the Shiki formula. Making the individual seals had always been easy. It was a trial and error of constructing a new Jutsu Shiki to circulate the complete thing together. However, eventually the end result spoke for itself, as it always did nowadays. Both Naruto and Zetsu could walk into the heart of a pantheon, and they would mistake them for nature spirits. A little stronger than your average nature spirit, but still, it will raise absolutely no alarm. As long as they did not use any of their drastic techniques, and they stuck to the small, basic ninjutsu, everything would be just fine. Yawning deeply and stretch, Naruto woke the animals that had decided to sleep on his body for that night. A sparrow that had came by to rest right on his head in his ear. It woke up rather angrily at the rude woke-up call. It flapped its wings and took off as it went to nest in a tree for the remaining time until it was fully woken up. A few fox cubs that had rested on his stomach leaped off as they scrambled off into the bushes, making their way. A few other rodents did similar things as well. However, it was not fear or panic. It was more out of surprise than anything else. As Naruto merely laughed. "Sorry guys," he said. "A man should not stay in bed earlier than the sunrise, you know." "Pops!" a voice called out from a nearby tree. As Naruto turned to see his son, holding on to one of the lower branches with one hand. It reminded him of a small chimp. "Well, good morning, my boy. How is it hanging?" said Naruto, in a jokey tone, a big smile plastered on his face. Zetsu's entire body slack as he was still holding on. "Please, for the love of God, don't start," he said. "Come on," said Naruto, waving him off. "It's never too early for some wonderful comedy." Zetsu groaned as he made himself fall, as he landed before making his way over towards his father. They decided to spend the night in the park, and not in a hotel like sane people would do. They stayed in the park. The reason, the both of them were sage, so being outside in nature, it felt more at home than inside of a 5-star hotel. It had been a habit for them to simply sleep where they found themselves at night. They never found themselves worrying about any shelter. "So what's for today?" "I was thinking that we could try some of the Chinese food here. It's different from the authentic stuff," Zetsu said, looking up toward his father. Naruto glanced down towards him. "Didn't you say you were getting tired of that?" he asked. "Not really. I got sick of the flavors that they use in China. Apparently, they use all sorts of different flavors here. They even change the cooking recipe. So the result is going to be a lot different here," Zetsu told him. "That's so, huh?" said Naruto, as he nodded in agreement to go and try some. "Alright," said Naruto. "Let's go," as he started to speed walk towards the entrance of the park, ignoring the looks that he was getting from the early morning joggers. Zetsu shook his little head. Even though his father was one of the oldest thing on this planet, he still acted hyperactive as he did. After the millennia that they spent together, later on they came across one of the more popular food chains restaurant. And much to everyone's shock, including the waiters and the chef, they ordered 2 of everything on the menu. They proceeded to analyze when it arrived as they looked at it. Before they picked up a wonton and threw it in their mouth as they munched down on it. However, on that day, Naruto and Zetsu and Uzumaki solely swear to never touch Chinese American cuisine again. The day passed quickly for the two tourists as they traverse and see if anything would interest them. The both of them were still upset about the breakfast that they had earlier. While the food tasted good, the problem was the label. You can't simply fry half ingredients and call it Chinese. Since when do Chinese recipe include so much oil? And to make things worse, sugar and salt are not goddamn seasoning. You don't just drown your chicken in it. Naruto ranted bitterly. Naruto had a very rich, refined palate. He's been alive for longer than all of these recipes have been invented. He practically invented much of them as well. He had half a mind to burst into the kitchen and give the cooks a piece of his mind, but Zetsu knew his father too well and advised against it. The cooks were not the problem. It was the people that came up with the idea. They just did it to make a quick buck. They knew nothing about the true refined taste of what they were doing. Nevertheless, Naruto calmed himself and just put it behind him. There was a lot more to do, a lot more places to try at, a lot more things to see. As for Zetsu, he had shifted his appearance into a blonde, blue-eyed child, looking just like his father. It made Naruto blush at the innocent sight. It was so wholesome to him. He needed to immortalize this image. As he got his camera and told his son to stand in front of a landmark that they passed by, he wanted to take some photos. As Naruto proceeded to barrage Zetsu with pictures, he was unaware of the looks that he was receiving from the onlookers. Naruto was decked out in orange cargo pants, along with an open kimono with a swirl on the back with the words, "No ramen, no life," decked out on it. He looked like what you would think of when you think about a tourist. Not to mention a large straw hat and the glasses. It was a perfect sight. And to make things a whole lot worse, he was wearing Crocs and he felt absolutely no shame for it. Zetsu was looking down, trying to keep his head down from his father's horrifying fashion sense, despite his father telling him to give him a winning smile. When the photo session came to an end, as Naruto was offering to carry Zetsu on his shoulder, like one did for a toddler, Zetsu hated that he kind of liked being doted on by Naruto. As annoying as the man was sometimes, with his antics and his god-awful dad jokes, Zetsu still very much loved his father and the attention that he received from him. He could understood where his father's antics were coming from. A few of his loose-lipped uncles had told him bits and pieces of his father's past. Naruto never liked to talk about his past, but the way he handled all of the suffering as a mortal and transferred them into an uncountable amount of love for his precious people, it spoke wonders of his character. The blonde had created Zetsu thousands of years ago. The green-haired youth was created from Naruto's will, and he would have happily served as a tool to be discarded. That was how much loyalty Zetsu had in him since he came into the world. He found out later that it was the same way his predecessor, Zetsu, that was created by Kaguya Osusuke, had no will of his own but just the will to serve his creator. However, Naruto did not see him that way. He made sure that he had a normal and wonderful childhood, be that as him carrying him as a toddler in the first few years, or celebrating every single birthday as a family. He never hesitated to show his son just how much he truly cared for him. He satisfied his childish curiosity and did whatever it takes in his power to support the younger man's dream and curiosities. That was one of the many reasons why he will always be the most important figure in Zetsu's heart. That was also why he took it upon himself to never end up like the first Zetsu. He never wanted to cause his family pain or stray away from the mortal path that was laid down by his father. Zetsu would always be by his father's side, even with his father's embarrassing habits. As night fell, they found themselves walking along in one of the many quiet neighborhoods in the city. It's just been a few days since they arrived. However, Naruto was ready to make their way towards another state. Zetsu had a similar opinion. He already got his fill of visiting the local parks and butcher shops, and also getting dragged out of some of them. After verbally assaulting some of the vendors, Naruto had to drag him out. Just like how Naruto was obsessed with ramen, Zetsu was obsessed with meat, while his father had forbidden him from eating human flesh or the flesh of humanoid creatures. Everything else was okay. Zetsu decided to make the line very thin by experimenting with every single creature that his father did not blacklisted. He has come to see himself as very knowledgeable in his hobby, and he would not tolerate anything but the best when people has to offer him, and those vendors did not offer the best that they could. The other grown people within the butcher shop had steered clear away from the child that was able to make the vendors come to tears with just his words. Then Naruto had proceeded to grab him and get the hell out of there. As for Naruto, as he was walking, his eyes were closed as he was letting his senses sweep over the entire district. There was no need for him to use Sage Mode. Over time, his senses became so sharp that he could literally map out and see everything within his own mind just by spreading out his senses. It was always an interesting experience for him, just to let his spirit wander around the entire place. It was a calming feeling, and also it made him stay alert as well. That is when he heard growling and humans shouting and screaming. His eyes snapped open as his body turned towards said sound. Zetsu noticed. Before Zetsu could even react, Naruto was gone. Because of his sensory ability, he has already seen what is going on, and he had to move accordingly. While a body flicker would have been faster, Naruto still had to maintain his cover. Running above superhuman speeds, he bounced off the nearby walls and buildings. As he ran the entire distance in less than 3 seconds, as he leaped over the scene of trouble that was going on. Two massive large wolves. Their fur was black. They cornered two teenagers and a child against the back wall of an alley. The children had nowhere to run as the massive beasts reared their teeth at them. As Naruto rocketed forward, to the normal onlookers, all they would see was a yellow flash before the two animals burst into golden dust. As he landed in a crouch, his arms still extended in a chopping motion. He then straightened himself up as he turned towards the kids. The oldest of the teen, a lanky blonde-haired youth dressed in a t-shirt and torn jeans, held a club in front of him in a threatening manner. However, from the expression on his face, he was still trying to recover from the shock of the unexpected rescue. The same could be said for his older female companion. She had dark hair in a punk style, as she was holding a spear in front of her, a bronze spear, as she was holding the shoulder of the small girl, the smallest, who was about 7 years old, bright blonde hair, as she was holding a hammer in her tiny hands. Naruto's fatherly instinct flared up immediately. The three did not look injured though, a little roughed up from running. That was all it seems. Nothing to truly be alarmed about. However, being the caring person that he was, the sage had to make sure that they were doing well, as he placed on that foxy grin of his and placed his arm up in a calming manner, trying to calm them down. "Hey kids," he said, A bit rough night we're having, isn't it? As he could already hear the groan of disappointment from the incoming Zetsu. The two teens still look worried, even though the dark-haired one cringed in response, as a tiny child laughed at that. As Naruto grin widened, is that some appreciated laughter I heard? Finally, someone who appreciates my joking talents, he said with a big smile on his face. The little child only giggled harder. Eventually, it affected the other two, as they dropped their guards somewhat. Who are you? The blonde one asks. He was still holding the golf club. As Naruto tilted his head to the side. Isn't it more polite to introduce yourself before asking others? The boy narrowed his eyes in suspicion before he huffed. Fine. I am Luke, he said. This is Talia. And the kid is Annabeth. Talia quickly elbowed him in the side. Don't just give our name to a stranger, Luke, she said. You saw what he did, right? He could be a monster, she said, chastising Luke. Her shout caused an offended look to appear on Naruto's face as he raised his hand. Hey now, he said. I ain't no monster. I mean, come on. Do I look like a monster, he said. My name is Naruto. I'm just a guy that can punch stuff. Real good, he said, with a smile, as he punched his face into his palm. Don't screw with me, she said. There is no mortal that can do what you did. As she held up her spear in a threatening manner. Mortal? Monsters? Oh, said Naruto, as he looked at them. If he focused a bit, he could see their connection. They're probably demigods, he thought to himself, as the faint riches of energy was coming from them that linked them to separate domains. Those connections would be fairly visible for demigods, because they did not have the same connection over the domains that their parents possessed. As he thought over his next course of actions, he could not just come out and admit his real identity, so he decided to go what with him and Zetsu had spoken about. Well, you got me. I'm not normal. I am what you would call a clear-sighted mortal. I train extremely hard to become strong. So I could not let these bad wolves hurt you kids. And if I was a monster, we would not be having this discussion right now. Thalia frowned before she turned towards Luke as they started to discuss their next course of actions, including what Naruto said. While that was happening, Zetsu finally arrived. He looked like a teenager version of Naruto. Well, his clothing was less ridiculous though. Hey Pops, who are these kids? Zetsu asked. As that stopped the kids' discussion, the younger blonde Annabeth glanced out to see who it was. Hey, we're the same age, Talia said. And who are you? She asked, as Naruto grabbed his son by his shoulder to show him off in a manner. This is Zetsu, my son, he said. He liked to eat grilled meat and gardening. Ain't he one handsome feller? He almost shouted in glee as he did every time he introduced his little boy. Zetsu grumbled under his breath as he really could have introduced himself, his gaze looking up toward the three kids. The three kids saw the pure look of joy on the older blonde face, and their fear started to melt away. For some reason they couldn't help it but just to trust him. He had this feeling that radiated from him, a pure, innocent feeling. The youngest, straightforward. The older girl did not stop her, but she watched carefully. The child stood in front of Zetsu as she smiled, showing off her tiny teeth. I'm Annabeth, she said. I like books and architecture. Nice to meet you, Zetsu. And Mr. Naruto, her gray eyes looking up at him. As Naruto grinned, Zetsu tensed in dread, seeing the completely over-happy expression on his father's face at seeing the cute child. He's gonna want to adopt her. Running through Naruto's mind. You are so getting adopted, he thought in glee. Time skip. The Jade Emperor was exhausted. Sweat, grime, all over his face. His robes were barely holding on. His red hair was plastered and spread out in a messy way. The most problematic injury seemed to be on his forehead. His opponent was steadily walking towards him, both staff resting on his shoulder. The large man stopped right in front of the kneeling redhead, a cold expression written all over his face. It is saddening that it had to come to this, the man spoke, looking down towards the kneeling deity. Saddening. Please, spare me your false platitudes. It would have always come to this, the Jade Emperor said in a snarl. Really? I offer you my hand several times. In friendship, we would have strived together. However, time after time, you show me that it was not possible. Side by side, we could have ruled. Side by side, the Emperor snarled. With humanity? With demons? You dare imply that our kind would ever stoop so low to consider you lot, our equals? He spat. His face started to become purple in absolute rage at the implications that this man was making. The sage, who stood above him, simply released a soft smile at the fuming man. Immortality is a privilege. The power that runs through your veins is a privilege. Only our kind should have access to it. No one else. And you dare to besmirch our land with your very existence. The red-haired emperor finally lost it. He removed the hand that he was holding to his face on his forehead, showing a fully healed third eye, the organ that gave him control over all the natural forces of the universe. However, in response, the sage shifted the staff into a bracelet and clasped his hands together as he closed his eyes. Jade Emperor, there is one thing that you and the other gods never seem to truly understand. The sage opened his eyes, and a power that raged, a power that spread, seemed almost unending, spread from him. And that is a creature, infinite, potential for evolution, he said. And thus their battle continued. A battle that has long since been forgotten by time, many millennia ago. What is this? Zetsu knew who he was the moment he opened his eyes. The first thing that he saw was a blond man looking down at him with a smile. And this is my lord, he spoke to himself. He opened his mouth to speak, but the man spoke first. Hey there, little fellow, he said. What should I name you, he said. Assuming that the question was directed towards him, Zetsu automatically gave his response. I am Zetsu, he said emotionlessly. What is my purpose? However, the blond man lost his smile as his face turned into an unreadable expression. Huh? The man said. Zetsu believed that he needed to clarify. My lord, what is my life purpose? The newborn asked. What? A purpose? What do you mean, boyo? Why are you asking me? Shouldn't you know? Should I? You are my creator. I shall serve you to the best of my ability, Zetsu said calmly. No. The man seemed confused, as he did not say a full sentence. Did I say something wrong? Zetsu asked. The man muttered something under his breath. There was a silence until the man spoke. Zetsu-chan, he said. You are my son. He then held Zetsu up and turned him around. Zetsu finally saw where they were. They were in a forest. The cherry blossom trees were all over, pure pink everywhere. Zetsu was taken aback by the beauty of it all, so much so that water came to his eyes. I am your father. If there was any way to describe the feeling that Zetsu suddenly felt, it was like his soul became a whole lot lighter. He had no idea how or why, but that was a feeling that he got from that moment. This beautiful world is yours to frolic in. Grow up to be healthy and strong and happy, but most importantly, as Naruto looked right into his eyes, your purpose is whatever you decide. And he was right. Time skip. In the park, Virginia. June the 7th, 2000. Zetsu. Zetsu. Zetsu was snapped out of the memory as he was recalling the date of his birth. He snapped his gaze around. What is it, Pops? He said. The sage pouted like a child. The small girl was currently on his shoulders. See, Annie? Do you see how my son is mean to me? He dramatically cried, making the girl giggle at his antics. As Zetsu saw his father was so immature sometimes, Annabeth patted Naruto on the head like one would do to a horse. There, she said. Zetsu, do not be a jerk to Mr. Naruto, she said. As Naruto was now smiling, Zetsu frowned. Whatever, he said. What do you want, Pops? He asked. As he frowned, we'll have to discuss that lip of yours later. Before Zetsu could retort, but little Annie ear was asking you a question. You gotta stop daydreaming like that, my boy. Zetsu huffed as he turned his gaze towards the girl, waiting. Well, he said to her, making her blush in embarrassment. Oh, I wanted to know what you want to be. Like when you graduated school and stuff. Wait, why aren't you in school? Are you skipping? Or Zetsu held his head at the barrage of questions that she started to send his way. God damn it, he thought. This was supposed to be a relaxing vacation, but now it was changing ever so often. Why was his pops insisting on taking these children with them? They were demigods, as in the very being that his father was trying to avoid. And the kids were demigods. Zetsu screamed out in frustration in his mind. This was why he hated his father, good nature most times. At the head of the group, the two other demigods were discussing their own little query about the newcomers. Are you sure that you can trust them with Annie? Talia questioned. She did not like the thought of leaving her surrogate little sister in the stranger's hand. Even though it has been a week since they all met. I don't, but we still have to play it cool, said Luke, in a calm tone. And I think it's too early for we to trust them, even though they have not shown themselves to be a threat, or being a disguised monster, he said. And what about the ridiculous strength that they seem to have? The dark-haired girl responded in a sarcastic tone. She did not believe that bullshit about Mr. Whiskers being a black belt in multiple martial arts, or his son being a prodigy. No black belt can simply punch a cyclops. They can't. The group had came across several monsters in their journey, which were easily dispatched, if not by the Uzumakis, then by the elder demigods. But the problem was that both father and son was hiding something very big. As she couldn't help but be suspicious, the way he punched the hellhounds into nothingness when they first met. As Talia and Luke wonder if this was interference from their godly family, and if it was, neither of them liked it in the slightest. Both had suffered because of the so-called Olympians. Luke lost his only family to a curse-induced madness, and Talia lost her younger brother to her mother selfishness and her father rashness. The both of them just want to get to camp, half-blood, so they can be in a safe haven against monsters. That, and maybe get to know other demigods. But going back to the right topic, the point was Zetsu and Naruto were shady. Apparently the both of them were Japanese tourists on vacation here. It was rather shocking how well they spoke English. It was like talking to another American. No dragging of sentences, no pauses, no mistaken words. Nothing at all. Another surprising fact was how weird their dynamic was. Talia had no idea how a functional family would act, other than what she read in books or what she had witnessed on TV. That was how she believed it should be. But their own family seemed like a rather stable one, and at the same time, Not so much. Mr. Whiskers acted like he was the son of the pair, as he was childish, happy-go-lucky, not to mention his horrible dad jokes, and he always seemed fit to annoy his son. At least Annabeth seemed to like them a lot. Hell, she has grown rather attached to him. She was acting like an average little girl around him. Talia wasn't so sure that she liked that though. Sure, children could see the goodness in a person, but the way Annabeth just lashed onto the man, that worried her. And of course not, she was not jealous, and anyone that said otherwise would taste the tip of her spear. Zetsu was weird in his own way. He was like an adult, grumpy cat. She could put part of it aside for the teenage hormones. She was one too, and she knew how angry she could get over the silliest things most times. However, his face seemed to be stuck between a scowl or a condescending smirk. Well, that wasn't completely true though. Whenever his dad started to fuss about him or brag about him, there is usually this smile on his face. There was also the fact that he was really smart. Maybe that is the reason why he was not in school. All Mr. Whisker said was Zetsu did not need school anymore. Early graduation maybe, or maybe he was being homeschooled by him. She would continue to ponder on the many questions as she kept her gaze upon the both of them. But she was sure of one thing. If they were legit, she would stick around with them. Or maybe even ask Mr. Whiskers for a few pointers here and there. After all, having more powers to defeat and protect yourself against monsters never hurt anybody, now did it? Luke was in a similar boat with her. However, his thoughts were a bit darker than hers. He did not trust the two strangers as far as he could throw the both of them. Everything they did, from their meeting to their strength, validate all of his suspicions even more. Did his father send them to watch over them? Or someone else? If so, why? The Olympians already showed that they did not give a damn about any of them. If they did, then his mother wouldn't. He shook his head, fighting off those thoughts, as he sent his glare towards the two blonde duo. He did not care for the act the larger one was putting on. There was no way a human can be that strong, even after years of training. It just was not possible. For now, all he wanted to do was get his two fellow demigods to safety. Once they were safe, he would think about his future then. Looking at the pair, Annabeth was laughing as she rode on the taller man's shoulders. He only agreed to let her do that because he wanted to keep things civil. He did not know if the man was prone to anger if he was denied. After all, he got plenty of experience with those kind of people who lash out when they get angry. He swore to himself. He and the other two were family by this point, and if these two tried to hurt any of them, he would do whatever it takes to stop them. Meanwhile, with Annabeth, she liked Mr. Naruto. She knew that she should not, with the whole stranger danger thing and all. But he saved her and her friends, not to mention this feeling of safety when she was with him. Mr. Naruto was incredibly kind. He made good foods for her, and he gave her piggyback and shoulder rides whenever she was tired of walking. It was weird that they did not have a car, but maybe they just like camping. It felt like months had gone by since she met him, even though she knew it has only been 1 week. That might be because of the fun that she's been having. The entire trip felt like a family trip and not an escape anymore. Luke and Talia was becoming the siblings that she wished she had had. Even Zetsu as well, even though he acted like a grumpy pet when Mr. Naruto told his funny jokes. He was smart though. Like, crazy smart. Mr. Naruto said that he was a prodigy, and Zetsu proved that by answering every single question that she ever asked him. Even though he acted annoyed on several occasions, he saved her curiosity and answered her questions. She had told Mr. Naruto that she wanted to grow up and be an architect. The man had laughed heartily. However, what he said next, it made her happy. I hope you're ready for the challenges ahead. However, you're a very smart girl, and I know that you can do it. Who knows? Perhaps one day you will build the eighth wonder of the world. Yeah, she really liked Mr. Naruto. He was very nice, even though he might react a bit weirdly when she called him Mr. As for Naruto, there wasn't much that he had to complain about. Sure, this was risky, especially that he was trying to avoid the very gods, and these children were demigods. Zetsu had gave him an earful some time ago about this. But come on, he couldn't just leave these kids. If their parents were such asses that they could not even bother to watch over them, then the kids probably wouldn't live too long. After all, he trademarked the title, Best Father Ever, and he would curse himself if he ever thought of abandoning these kids, who was in need of help. That was something that he would just not do. Sure, the older blonde had an emo look, and the older girl had a gleam in her eyes, which reminded him of Sasuke whenever he saw a nice jutsu in the past. But you know what? These kids were alright, especially little Annie. If he had his way, she would have become his adopted daughter the first day from he met her. Too bad though, that she insists on calling him Mister. Well, there was nothing that he could do about it now. Just got a soldier onto the camp that he kept on whispering about, and see if he could find some ramen around here. Or perhaps make it, he thought to himself. So with that, they made their way off, as there was many challenges ahead. However, Naruto was such a caring person that he couldn't just leave the kids alone. However, when the gods find out about him, they would not be too kind, especially the very paranoid Zeus, who had no idea just who Naruto is, or what he is to be quite exact. But guys, be ends up so right here. If you want to see next portion, do like, subscribe, comment down below, and turn on that bell notification to stay posted. Remember, share to all of your friends in your social media platform. And also guys, don't forget to go ahead and check out the other what ifs of the other channels. So yeah, without further ado or wasting more time, how about we jump right into this? Let's get out of here guys, now.